What happened during the 2007 general elections in Kenya that led to the worst post-election incident in the history of the nation? That is the focus of this episode. Hello, viewers. Thank you for joining us for another episode in this mini-series focusing on Resuscitating Kenya, a title of a children's book that I wrote in 2010, reflecting on the incident that followed the hotly contested general elections in Kenya. We are continuing to reflect on that incident for the purpose of drawing lessons that can help us as a nation, as a community, whether in Kenya or abroad. We have something in common. Kenya is our heritage. Lessons that can help us as we anticipate the forthcoming general election in 2027 to avoid seeing a repeat or even anything resembling that incident that was dubbed the lowest moment in the history of the nation. I have mentioned and will restate again that I am not a politician and I'm not presenting this series from a perspective of a politician. But I married a political analyst, or I should call him a political enthusiast. And we were blessed with precious offsprings, among them an activist and the other, and some have developed curiosity in politics to the point that between the three of them, there are 2 minors and 1 major in their undergrad political science. So with that kind of a family, you can imagine the conversations that occupy our family gathering. And I pick a lesson or two. I learned something from these members of family as they analyze situations, discuss situations, and sometimes kind of talk about their thoughts or their opinions, perspectives on the different political parties, platforms, and politics in general. Now, those discussions have proven informative and interesting, but not interesting enough to move me anywhere close to that display. No. I am a storyteller. I listen to and I tell stories. And this time, the story that I told through this children's book titled Resuscitating Kenya was one reflecting on the sad incident of the post-election violence of 2007. So this episode today is a peek behind the scenes to respond to the question, what happened, why, and how? What happened to bring the country as low as it went? Why did it happen? And how did we get there? It will be too naive to attempt a simple answer to the question of what happened. This is a question that has been studied both locally in Kenya, regionally, but also internationally. There are articles written, there are research work done, including the United Nations Human Rights Commission. There is also an article on their website analyzing, looking at, trying to understand why the post-election violence happened. The one I want to focus on right now is one by a PhD candidate in 2023 named Ochieng, and co-authored with his 2 professors, Professor Matanga and Professor Iteyo of Masinde Muliro University, that's somewhere in Western Kenya. The research was published in the African Journal of Empirical Research. And in the opening statement of the abstract, they write, the election of leaders by the people is the aim of democratic procedures. An electoral system is intended to ensure that the outcomes reflect the preferences of the majority of voters, providing elected officials legitimacy and the results are unchallenged in any form. Quite a high order. That the election of leaders by the people is the aim of democratic procedures. An electoral system is intended to ensure that 1, the outcomes reflect the preferences of the people, 2, the preferences of the majority of voters, 2, provides elected officials legitimacy, and 3, the results are unchallenged in any form. As I was reflecting and put my thoughts on this children's book, Resuscitating Kenya, on page 3, I made an observation going behind the scenes, like I said. And I write, towards the end of December 2007, Kenya held their general elections as usual. This is an exercise that is performed every 5 years. Unfortunately, during the elections, it was believed that some things were done contrary to the way a stable and strong country, democratic country, should handle elections. It seemed like important ingredients or steps were lacking or forgotten during those elections. Either some shortcuts might have been taken to speed up the process, or certain important steps missed altogether during the procedure. And so, people responded to this. They challenged the legitimacy of the results of those elections. Some steps were missed. It did not reflect a democratic procedure that ensures that the outcomes are the preferences of the majority of voters. That is not what people believed happened. And there was a fear that elected officials were not legitimate and that the results were questionable. Unfortunately, at the time, there was no way of a recourse, a dialogue, a way to engage and have conversations. It seemed like the reactions were made fast without thinking through. Each people believing that they were wrong, they were on the right and they were wrong. And that was unfortunate. So it all boils down to righteousness, doing what's right by all. In our opening episode, I quoted from the Bible, Proverbs 14:34, that says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin condemns any people. It boils down to righteousness. Was it right? Was it just? Was it legitimate? Can it stand the test? So that is not what people believed. But that can happen. It has happened in other countries. You have seen it even in mature democracies, like in the West, challenging the results, questioning the procedure or the process. The problem here was how they resolved the problem, the approach that was taken. We can almost assume that nobody intended to see the situation deteriorate to the point that it did. And if people had to redo again, to do it the second time, they would see the signs of potential deterioration of the situation and maybe stop before it gets too far. That's our hope. In episode 5, we want to look at the unexpected consequences. The unexpected consequences of making certain decisions, taking certain actions, engaging in certain behaviors. What are the unexpected and unwanted consequences? Till next time, the next episode, when we look at the mini-series focusing on my children's book titled Resuscitating Kenya, with the purpose of learning something from the history to understand the present, and more importantly, to inform a better future for everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for checking us out. Till next time, for the listener.